Sure was a special morning to wake up to this. Not like a special, but like a oof. Boy, it just hit different this morning because, well, some Sidney Powell lawsuits got dropped in Michigan and Georgia. And buddies, let me tell you something. They ain't full of shit. You know, there's a couple of things in there that might be a little bit far-fetched and hard to believe, but she is trying to hit on the substantive issues. And you know that the media is scared on this one because, well, first we're going to take a look at how they're reporting these, and this video specifically is going to look at the Michigan lawsuit because it's 75 pages, and the Georgia video will be coming here later today, and that lawsuit's 100 pages. I'm not going to hit on every single topic, otherwise we'll be here for days at that point, but we're going to give you the highlights of both, and we're just going to chop them up into two videos because I think that's probably best for ease of digestion. But first, we're going to set the stage. How is the media reporting this? How are they taking to the fact that, oh boy, do we got some strong claims coming out of this one? Ex-Trump campaign lawyer Sidney Powell, good way to frame it to begin with, not that she's a legitimate actor in this or anything, files lawsuits in Michigan and Georgia. That is factually true. Sidney Powell, the lawyer, recently distanced from the Trump campaign, trying to slander her already, on Wednesday filed typo-filled lawsuits in both Michigan and Georgia alleging election fraud. Now, they're already trying to dampen this as just some kind of hastily thrown together argument, and there's no substance there whatsoever. Let's see what they say. The suit's alleged problems linking to voting machines, mail-in ballots, and former Venezuelan president Hugo Chavez, according to Bloomberg. Oh, so the Hill didn't even bother reading the lawsuit itself? Oh boy, good thing, a guy with a webcam and a fucking nice mic is gonna at least take the time to go through the fucking lawsuit here in a half second, but I guess I don't have the financial backing like the Hill does, so I have to do my own research. Gosh darn. Powell repeatedly made the accusation without providing evidence while she was a member of the Trump campaign's legal team. Well, it kind of proves to be a little bit different, the fact that she has the evidence in this lawsuit. Actually, these couple of lawsuits here. The new suits also include allegations about forged ballots and observers being unable to watch vote tabulations, Bloomberg reported. See how they like to just gloss over that? They don't want to give you any sort of information on that one, but they're just going to dig down and it's like, oh, she's just making accusations about crazy stuff like links to former dead Venezuelan president Hugo Chavez. Oh, see how crazy she is? Don't take any of this seriously. Oh, she can't even type properly. Well, it would have been a clerk who would have had to type that up hastily. And when you are under the gun, proverbially, metaphorically speaking, I suppose, I don't think it makes the claims any less legitimate. And there's also kind of an idea that's floated out there that those were put in there in like a 4D chess sort of thing. I don't necessarily buy this. I just think that it was one of those hastily put together things that, the evidence in there is damning and it is substantial. And the fact that the media is picking up on the typos and grabbing onto the more sensationalist claims and disregarding the much more vast claims of very easily provable irregularity and fraud allegations, that lets you know definitively that something is there. President Trump and his allies have repeatedly alleged that the evidence was riddled with widespread voter fraud without providing any evidence. But she just filed 2 lawsuits full of evidence, and Pennsylvania and Arizona and Michigan are also right there for the Trump side. So, how long can you keep this narrative up? Both cases filed by Powell are riddled with typographical issues. The case in Michigan had a number of formatting problems that removed spacing between words, Bloomberg reported. Why would you write something based on something somebody else did and not do the own checks for yourself? This is why you know that all of media right now is just a total hive mind, and this is why this is going dangerously unreported. In the Georgia suit, the word district is misspelled twice on the front page of the document. There's an extra C in district, and it was spelled district. Okay, cool. Does that immediately invalidate anything? No, it doesn't. The Trump campaign distanced itself from Sidney Powell. See how they're not mentioning any of the allegations in there? Yeah, exactly. How about that? Who actually saw that coming? Well, anybody with a set of eyes, I suppose, but fuck it. Let's dive dick first into this. 75 goddamn pages, and buddies, ooh, ooh, you just love to see a lawsuit with the name Gretchen Whitmer on there. Because this bitch may have quite a bit to do with this as well, because one of her previous associates who has ties to Dominion because she landed a fat contract with Dominion on behalf of the Democratic Party of Michigan in order to get somebody, I don't know, potentially helped into office, we'll say. But, yep, this one's fun. So as you can see here, it's got the case number and everything is fucking good to go on this one right here. So now we just await its day in court. This civil action brings to light a massive election fraud, multiple violations of the Michigan Election Code. See example MCL sections 168, 730-738, in addition to the election and electors clauses and equal protection clause of the U.S. Constitution violations that occurred during the 2020 general election throughout the state of Michigan, as set forth by the affidavits of dozens of eyewitnesses and statistical anomalies and mathematical impossibilities detailed in the affidavits of expert witnesses. See how many typographical errors are in this first statement? Yeah, not very many. None, actually. The scheme and artifice to defraud was for the purpose of illegally and fraudulently manipulating the vote count to manufacture an election of Joe Biden as president of the United States. The fraud was executed by many means, but the most fundamentally troubling, insidious, and egregious ploy was a systemic adaptation of old-fashioned ballot stuffing. Oh, see, we haven't even gotten to the Smartmatic stuff yet, and they already have the meat of this argument. It has very little to actually do with the Smartmatic claims and the Dominion voting system claims. It has more to do with just good old-fashioned voter fraud with no checks or anything like that. That's more or less what they allege here. Anyways, we'll get back to it. It has now been amplified and rendered virtually invisible by computer software created and run by domestic and foreign actors for this very purpose. Get on your tinfoil hats. This complaint details an especially egregious range of conduct in Wayne County. Oh, that's weird. We haven't heard about them before. Ugh. And the city of Detroit. Through this, conduct occurred throughout the state at the direction of Michigan state election officials. The same ones that were trying to put up poster board over windows and kicking out poll watchers that we seen the night of. And yeah, exactly. But no evidence, right? The multifaceted schemes and artifices implemented by defendants and their collaborators to defend, resulting in the unlawful counting or manipulating of hundreds of thousands of illegal, ineligible, duplicate, or purely fictitious ballots in the state of Michigan that constitute a multiple of Biden's purported leads in the state. While this complaint and eyewitness and expert testimony incorporated herein identify with specificity sufficient ballots required to overturn and reverse the election results. Huge claim. The entire process is so riddled with fraud, illegality, and statistical impossibility that this court and the Michigan's voters, courts, and legislators cannot rely on or certify any numbers resulting from this election. They are looking at whole hog taking Michigan and fucking chucking it into the Great Lakes. Huge claims, huge claims. And here's where we get into a little bit of a weaker argument, in my opinion, but it stands with, well, consistent with what Sidney Powell's been pushing the entire time, the Dominions and the communists. The fraud begins with the election software and hardware from Dominion Voting Systems Corporation, used by the Michigan Board of State Canvassers. Oh, see, they forgot a space there. The Dominion systems derived from the software designed by Smartmatic corporations, which became Sequoia in the United States. Smartmatic and Dominion were founded by foreign oligarchs and dictators to ensure computerized ballot stuffing and vote manipulation to whenever level was needed to make certain Venezuelan dictator Hugo Chavez never lost another election. And they have some affidavits signed by some whistleblowers from Venezuela there who were in close contact with Hugo Chavez and, was there to design. And their claim is that all they require is 7 minutes alone with a voting machine and a screwdriver, and they can go ahead and install the programs or the malware, however you want to perceive it, and rig it however the hell you want it to. So big claims, but if this guy was down there and he's got the receipts, by all means they need to be out there. And here, I'll just read a little excerpt from him. Chavez was most insistent that Smartmatic design the system in a way that the system could change the vote of each voter without being detected. He wanted the software itself to function in such a manner that the voter were to place their thumbprint or fingerprint on the scanner, then the thumbprint would be tied to a record of the voter's name and identity as having voted, but that voter would not track to the changed vote. He made it clear that the system would have to be set up to not leave any evidence of the changed vote for a specific voter, and that there would be no evidence to show and nothing to contradict that the name or the fingerprint of the thumbprint was going with a changed vote. Smartmatic agreed to create such a system and produce the software and hardware accomplished that result for President Chavez. Now, they're claiming that this system was the foundation for what Dominion software put forward. It was built on the architecture already there. Therefore, the Dominion software itself will act exactly like how Smartmatic intended it to, and created that little backdoor there, and Dominion could continue to exploit that. That's what they're stating with that, and that's why, I don't know, man, it seems a little tinfoil hatty to me. But once again, that is just one of the many instances that they have out there. They have a lot more stronger evidence, in my opinion. How about fact witness testimony of voter fraud and other illegal conduct? Something that The Hill and apparently Bloomberg forgot to leave out of their articles there, but yeah, I'll do the work for them, why not? There were 3 broad categories of illegal conduct by election workers in collaboration with other state, county, and or city employees and Democratic poll watchers and activists. First, to facilitate and cover up the voting fraud and counting of the fraudulent, illegal, or ineligible voters. Election workers denied Republican election challengers access to the TCF, Cobo Hall, where all Wayne County, Michigan ballots were processed and counted. Denied Republican, they say Republic, but I'll just go ahead and add the AN. Poll watchers at the TCF Center meaningful access to view the ballot handling process or counting, and locked credential challengers out of the counting room so that they could not observe the process, during which time tens of thousands of ballots were processed. It's like they doubled when the full moon came out. Engaged in a systemic pattern of harassment, intimidation, and even physical removal of Republican election challengers, or locking them out of the TCF Center entirely. Yeah. Which was another allegation from the lady who came on the day after and went on the Steven Crowder stream, who was the original one who said that they were bringing in ballots in the Little Red Wagon, which, oh, how wonderfully they debunked that the next day with the other stupid reporter. It's like, oh, look at the Little Red Wagon. We have it right here, and it only has a camera equipment in it. Nothing to see here, even though it was the next day and it looked nothing like it. But yeah, what else was there was a Republican poll watcher left, and they weren't letting anybody else in. They didn't bother to attach that to any of their reporting, so that lets you know that they've at least been consistent in their coverage, or lack thereof in the media anyways. Systemically discriminated against Republican poll watchers and favored Democratic poll watchers. Oh, shock and horror. Ignored or refused to record Republican challenges to the violations outlined herein. And we are still going. Refuse to permit Republican poll challengers to observe ballot duplication and other instances where they allowed ballots to be duplicated by hand without allowing poll challengers to check if the duplication was accurate. Unlawfully coached voters to vote for Biden and to vote a straight Democratic ballot, including by going over to the voting booth with voters in order to watch them vote and coach them to whom to vote. If this is all starting to sound like echoes of the past, it's because, yeah, they've been saying this, and by they I mean Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani, Jenna Ellis, the entire team, or whatever the 2 factions, 3, 4, 5, 6 factions, whatever, whoever's dealing with this and whoever they're affiliated with, but they've been very consistent in their messaging. At least I can say that about one side. Anyways, as a result of the above, Democratic election challengers outnumbered Republicans by 2-1 or 3-1, and sometimes 2-0 at voting machines, and collaborated with Michigan State, Wayne County, and or the city of Detroit employees, including police, in all of the above unlawful and discriminatory behavior. Second, election workers illegally forged, added, removed, or otherwise altered information on ballots, the qualified voter file, and other voting records, including, here we go boys, fraudulently adding tens of thousands of new ballots and or new voters to the qualified voter file, in 2 separate batches on November 4th. That's when all the shit went fucking haywire. That would be in reference to the early morning counts that were supposed to stop, and then an hour and some later, once everybody else went home, some of the Democratic poll watchers just decided they were just going to go for a trip around the block and then come right back and start counting again. So that wasn't next day. It continued into next day, but it started at, 4 o'clock local. Forging voter information and fraudulently adding new voters, yes, the qualified voter file. In particular, when the voter's name could not be found, the election worker assigned the ballot to a random name already in the qualified voter file to a person who had not voted and recorded these new voters as having a birth date of January 1st, 1900. Changing dates on absentee ballots received after 8 p.m. on election deadline to indicate that such ballots were received before the deadline. So I kind of wonder if they're going to be pulling in the testimony that the postalman who's working with Project Veritas and had a couple of those videos there just right after the election. That seems like a lifetime ago, but he was right there in Pennsylvania. So I wonder if they're going to be taking that into account down there in the Pennsylvania lawsuit. And I think there was something that came out. Oh no, that was over in Nevada. So it's so weird how all of this stuff is working together. It's almost like the United States Postal Service gave their full endorsement to one political candidate for the first time in their history. That's weird. Which government entity would be stupid enough to do that? Changing votes for Trump and other Republican candidates, interesting, and added votes to undervote ballots and removing votes for overvotes. Now, to try to make it seem like there were the precincts that were reporting overages or underages to at least try to cover up some of their ballot stuffing efforts. That's what that references. Third, election workers committed several additional categories of violation of the Michigan Election Code to enable them to accept and count other illegal, ineligible, or duplicate ballots, or reject Trump or Republican ballots, including permitting illegal double voting by persons that had voted by absentee ballot and in person, counting ineligible ballots, and in many cases multiple times, counting ballots without signatures or without attempting to match signatures, and ballots without postmarks pursuant to direct instruction from defendants. How about counting spoiled ballots? Systemic violation of ballot secrecy requirements. So that means, because you have to, when you're doing absentee ballots or the mail-in ballots, you have to have a witness, unless that was struck from your fucking requirements. It was in certain states, but I don't believe Michigan was afforded that same luxury. So it needed to be signed by a witness to prove that you, in fact, did fill out that ballot and it was not somebody else who voted for you on your behalf, which may or may not have happened a lot. I don't know. In the penultimate point, unsecured ballots arrived at the TCF loading garage, not in sealed ballot boxes without any chain of custody, and without envelopes after the 8 p.m. election day deadline, in particular the tens of thousands of ballots that arrived on November 4th, 2020. And the final point, accepting and counting ballots from deceased voters. That's one thing I kind of like about Biden right now, is the memes about him just being the king of the undead, because the man is so popular. His enthusiasm, his charisma just raises the dead and encourages them to vote, even in person, as tough as that is to believe. So now that we got all the information covered, what the entire lawsuit is going to cover, I'm just going to hit on a couple of different affidavits here at certain points to cover most of the topics, and then we're going to hit up the conclusion here. So first and foremost, Republican observers denied access to the TCF Center. Many individuals designated as challengers to observe the conduct of the election were denied meaningful opportunity to observe the conduct of the election. For example, challengers designated by the Republican Party or Republican candidates were denied access to the TCF Center, formerly called Cobo Hall, which is so much better. God, we should just keep old names for buildings. Anyways, different tangent for a different time. Ballot counting locations in Detroit, while Democratic challengers were allowed access. Exhibit 3, all of the affidavits, which I will leave a link to a Twitter thread that Buddy posted, because no other official source is doing the same kind of in-depth digging that Alt Tech is doing right now. Plain and simple. Many challengers have stated that Republican challengers who had been admitted to the TCF Center but who left were not allowed to return. Furthermore, Republican challengers who left the TCF Center were not allowed to be replaced by other Republican challengers, while Democratic challengers were replaced. Yeah, buddy. This is pretty disgusting. As a result of Republican challengers not being admitted or readmitted, while Democratic challengers were freely admitted, there were many more Democratic challengers allowed to observe the processing and counting of absent voter ballots than Republican challengers. Many challengers testified that election officials strictly and exactingly enforced a 6-foot distance rule for Republican challengers, but not for Democratic challengers. The left just loves to segregate. But this is pretty in line, and all of those affidavits there are from so many people. And like I said, I'll leave the link to all of the exhibits there, so you can feel free to check the affidavits if you just want to go back and double check my homework. But yeah, we got the signed affidavits. And the last time I checked, I know I'm not a lawyer, but I've heard lawyers say that, yeah, the amount of affidavits in both of these suits is pretty standard for a lawsuit, especially of this volume. And affidavits are evidence, so duh. Because very rarely are you going to have a case where you're going to have the guy standing over somebody, pull the trigger, and you are there to witness the entire crime going down. So everything is some shade of circumstantial evidence. It's just how much can you pull together? Well, when you have dozens of signed affidavits from different people of different political parties as well, because there are a few Democrats who decided to speak up about the situation. They were reprimanded just as vociferously as their Republican counterparts were. Now here's a little fun one. We get to look at a little graph here as well. The November 4 ballot dump, Wayne County and other Michigan counties, was physically impossible because there were more ballots than machines in those 4 counties could have counted or processed. Mr. Ramsland and his team analyzed the sudden injection totaling 384,733 ballots by four Michigan counties: Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, and Kent. Those have been studied extensively. Let's see what they find. In a 2-hour and 38-minute period in the early morning of November 4th, when they were running an apparent skeleton crew everywhere and people were going home, which would have included the first ballot dump described in paragraph 72. You can, double check that. Anyways, and included that this is an impossibility given the equipment available at the 4 reference locations. Specifically, Mr. Ramsland, yes, calculated that 94,867 ballots as the maximum number of ballots that could be processed in that time period. Interesting. They processed 384,733, but physically possible, you could only count 94,876. That is a shade over 4 times as many ballots as could possibly conceivably be counted. That's consistent with the people that have alleged and have signed affidavits in here that multiple batches were duplicated, triplicated, and quadruplicated? Yes, that sounds right. So, and thus, there were 289,866 more ballots processed in the time available for processing the 4 precincts townships than the capacity of the system allows. Mr. Ramsland concluded that the documented existence of the spikes are strongly indicative of manual adjustments either by the operator of the system, see paragraph 12 above, or the attack by outside actors. The vote totals added for all Michigan counties included Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, and Kent counties for the period analyzed by Mr. Ramsland are reproduced in the figure below. As we can see here, everything is looking normal, it's looking fine, and then we get to Kent County, and okay, it's a very populous county, but everything seems off. Like, okay, there are a few counties where you see a big discrepancy between Trump and Biden, most notably that guy right there, but and if I had superhuman vision, I'd be able to read that little name down there at the bottom. But everything else seems to be, reasonably in line, except for these huge counties. But that, of course, is just my speculation. I ain't no numbers runner. All right, so let's get into the 5 counts that they're trying to bring before this judge here in Michigan. So, count number 1, defendants violated the Election and Electors Clause and 42 United States Constitution, subsection 1983. I think I'm legal and right. Plaintiffs reallege all preceding paragraphs as is fully set forth here in The elector clause states that each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors for president, U.S. constitutional article. Okay, now I can see why Bloomberg was bitching a little bit. So Article 2, subsection 1, closure 2, subsection 2, something like that. Likewise, the election clause of the United States Constitution states that the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state and by the legislature thereof. The legislature is a representative body which makes the laws of the people. Of course. Plaintiffs have no adequate remedy at law and will suffer serious and irreparable harm unless the injunctive relief requested herein is granted. Defendants have acted and, unless enjoined, will act under the color of the state law to violate the elections clause. Accordingly, the results of the presidential election in the November 3rd, 2020 election must be set aside. So if you think the Pennsylvania judge who heard the initial Trump lawsuit was throwing a hissy fit, yeah, you kind of ain't seen nothing yet. You want me to disenfranchise this million of the voters in Michigan? Oh my God, you're racist. Yeah, we get it. Count number 2 against Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who's probably just right now throwing shit off of her husband's yacht. Secretary Benson and other defendants violated the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution. Ooh, that's a big one. Denial of equal protection. Invalid enactment of regulations affecting observing and monitoring the election. Plaintiffs refer to and incorporate by reference each of the prior paragraphs of the complaint as through the same or repeated at length herein. The 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution, not consultation. That's what lawyers do. Constitution provides, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property. I'd like to see them just run that back again when they do the impeachment lawsuits with her unconstitutional lockdowns. Without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction an equal protection of the law. Also see, there it is, Bush v. Gore. Having once granted the right to the vote on equal terms, the state may not, by a later arbitrary or disparate treatment, value one person's vote more than another's. And this is the most substantial count, so we're just going to go ahead and skip to the bottom here, so see what they're asking for in regards to this one. In addition to the alternative request for relief in the preceding paragraphs hereby restated, plaintiffs seek a permanent injunction requiring the Wayne County and other Michigan election boards to invalidate ballots, cast by, number 1, any voter added to the QVF, that seems reasonable, after the 8 p.m. election day deadline. I don't see why that would be a problem. Now, there's no 2, so it immediately jumps to 3, therefore we should just throw this all out, fuck it. Any absentee or mail-in ballot received without a signature or postmark, once again, very, very reasonable. Any ballot cast by a voter who submitted a mail-in ballot and voted in person. Because you are allowed to, if it hasn't been received by, this is in regards to the massive mail-in voting. If the vote that you mailed in hasn't been received by the date of the election, you can go in and either cancel your mail-in ballot, and you could have voted in person. That is what is being contested. It was contested yesterday in Philadelphia. There was testimony provided in that hearing that somebody tried to do that, and they were denied access to that. That's also what's being alleged here in Michigan, and sneak peek, they did that again in Georgia. Really makes it look like it was a concerted effort to fuck somebody out of an election. I'm not too sure, though. I'm just speculating. Nothing that I've signed is legally binding. Any ballot cast by a voter who submitted a mail-in ballot and voted in person. I just really needed to hammer that one home. It's not like I forgot where I was and just reread that. Any ballot cast by a voter not in the QVF that was assigned a name of a voter in the QVF. Cool. Voters whose signatures on the registrations had not been matched with the ballot. Exactly. If anybody reads to 5-6, they should find that extremely reasonable. Envelope and voter registration check. Because, okay, you look at the rate of rejected ballots in this election compared to every other election ever. It is, well, in the past, not even that far in the past, we just need to go to like Patterson, New Jersey, which the entire election was completely thrown out. Or, you know what, how about we just take a look at some Democratic primaries where 30% of ballots were thrown out and they used the exact same widespread mail-in balloting, and then this time around for the general election, oh boy, it was a fraction of a percentage, not even a full percentage, that were tossed aside because they were probably just summarily collected and put in the Biden piles. Anyways, and number 7, all dead votes. Yeah, because as much as Biden would like his peers to be able to have their voice heard, I think if you successfully voted for the first term of Woodrow Wilson, you shouldn't be able to vote in this election. I don't know. And count number 3. This is about the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution, article and amendments and fun. Denial of due process on the right to vote. Oh, buddy, how about doing a audit that you said that you might and then you didn't because you suck? Plaintiffs refer to and incorporate by reference each of the prior paragraphs of this complaint as though the same were repeated at length herein. The right of the qualified citizen to vote in the state election involving federal candidates is recognized as a fundamental right under the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution. Indeed, ever since the slaughterhouse cases, the United States Supreme Court has held that the privileges or immunity clauses in the 14th Amendment protect certain rights of federal citizenship and state interference, including the right of citizens to directly elect members of Congress. Fundamental right to vote protected by the 14th Amendment is cherished in our nation because it is of the basic civil and political rights. So this is an argument that all of these illegal ballots came in and they diluted the voter pool, therefore disenfranchised the people who voted legally. Makes sense. If all of the affidavits and all the evidence ends up coming to light, this is a very credible claim. And what do you want off that? Plaintiffs seek declaratory and injunctive relief requiring Secretary Benson to direct that Secretary Benson and Wayne County are enjoined from certifying the results of the general election, or, in the alternative, conduct a recount or canvass in which they allow a reasonable number of challengers to meaningfully observe the conduct of the Michigan County's canvassers and Board of State Canvassers, and these canvassing boards, canvass, exercise their duty and authority under Michigan law, which forbids certifying a tally that includes any ballots that were not legally cast or were switched from Trump to Biden through the unlawful use of Dominion Democracy Suite software and devices. So yeah, how about just do a meaningful audit and we don't have to toss this shit out? I think everybody will probably come to find some common ground on that point. But we're kind of dealing with people that are a little bit off the reservation, if you ask me. Count 4, widespread ballot fraud. Oh my God, there it is. There, we got the proof. We got the widespread. Oh my God. Plaintiffs reallege all preceding paragraphs is fully set forth herein. Isn't that fun to say? The glitches in the Dominion system that seem to have the uniform effect of hurting Trump and helping Biden, cite the source otherwise, have been widely reported in the press and confirmed by the analysis of independent experts. Okay, objection. Widely reported in the press? It's been attempted to, and then it was summarily fact-checked or outrightly shot down by the press. Throw out count number 4. I've had enough. The disparate treatment of Michigan voters is subjecting one class of voters to a greater burden of scrutiny than another, violates equal protection guarantees because the right to the suffrage can be denied by a disbasement or dissolution of the weight of the citizen's vote just as effectively as wholly prohibiting the free exercise of the franchise. Again, same allegation as count number 3, just brought in with the Dominion side of it. So, and count number 5. Michigan statutory election law violations, so specific to Michigan council law. Interesting. And voter ballots must only be counted when, at all times, there is at least one inspector or election inspector from each major political party. And as they allege, that just didn't fucking happen. How about violation subsection 168.733? Per eyewitness accounts described in the complaint as its attached sworn affidavits, defendants habitually and systemically failed to provide space for election inspectors from the Republican Party, including plaintiff, to observe election procedure, failed to allow inspection of poll books, failed to share the names of the electors being entered in the poll books, failed to allow the examination of each ballot as is going to be counted, and failed to keep the records of obvious and observed fraud. But we're not done yet. Upon information and belief, defendants failed to post by 8 a.m. on Election Day the number of absentee ballots distributed to absent voters and failed to post before 9 p.m. the number of absent voters returned before on Election Day, making it easier to just create more votes because we don't know how many to expect in. Interesting how that works. And last but certainly not least, Wayne County's and Secretary Benson's denial of Republican challengers' right to participate and observe in the processing of ballots violates Michigan's election code and resulting in the case of counting of the ballots that were ineligible and to be counted and diluted or canceled out the lawfully cast ballots of the Michigan voters. So hitting them again with a dilution of the voter pool. Love it. You love to see it. So in closing, their prayer for relief. Let's all hold hands now. Not too close, though. Social distancing. Accordingly, plaintiffs seek an emergency order instructing defendants to decertify the results of the general election for the office of president. Alternatively, plaintiffs seek an order instructing the defendants to certify the results of the general election for office of the president in favor of President Donald Trump. So either throw it out or let President Trump win fair and square, you fuckers. Stop trying to cheat. In the alternative, plaintiffs seek an emergency order prohibiting defendants from including any of the certified results from the general election, the tabulation of absentee and mailing ballots which do not comply with Michigan election code, including, without the limitation, the tabulation of absentee and mail-in ballots. Trump's campaign's watchers were prevented from observing or based on the tabulation of invalidly cast absentee and mail-in ballots which lack a secrecy envelope or contain on that envelope any text, mark, or symbol which reveals the elector's identity, political affiliation, or candidate preference. Do not include on the outside envelope a completed declaration that the date is signed by the elector, are delivered in person by third party or non-disabled voters, or any of the Michigan Election Code violations set forth in Section 2 of this complaint. Now, what do you want? What do you want? For these reasons, plaintiffs ask the court to enter a judgment in their favor and provide the following emergency relief. An order directing Secretary Benson, Governor Whitmer, you can't tell that bitch to do fuck all, the Board of State Canvassers, and Wayne County to decertify the election results. An order enjoining Secretary Benson and Governor Whitmer from transmitting the currently certified election results to the Electoral College. So stop it if they don't want to decertify it. An order requiring Whitmer to transmit certified election results that state that President Donald Trump is the winner of the election. Oh, that would really just crush her soul. An immediate order to impound all the voting machines and software in Michigan for expert inspection by the plaintiffs, which I think you should probably do unless you have something to hide, right? An order that no votes received or tabulated by machines that were not certified as required by federal and state law be counted. A declaratory judgment declaring that Michigan's failed system of signature verification violates the Electors and Elections Clause by working a de facto abolition of the signature verification requirement. A declaratory judgment declaring that current certified election results violates the Due Process Clause of the United States Constitution, Amendment 14. The declaratory judgment declaring that mail-in and absentee ballot fraud must be remedied with the full manual recount or statistically valid sampling that properly verifies the signature or absentee ballot envelopes that invalidates the certified results if the recount of sampling analysis shows a sufficient number of ineligible absentee ballots were counted. An emergency declaratory judgment that voting machines be seized and impounded immediately for the forensic audit by the plaintiff's experts. A declaratory judgment declaring absentee ballot fraud occurred in violation of constitutional rights, election laws, and under state law. A permanent injunction prohibiting the governor and secretary of state from transmitting the currently certified results to the Electoral College based on the overwhelming evidence of election tampering, which we got pages of, my dudes. Immediate production of 48 hours of security camera footage recordings of all rooms used in the voting process at the TCF Center for November 3rd and November 4th. You'll love it because, oh buddy, are those cameras there? And will they show some shit? You bet your ass they will. Plaintiffs further request that the court grant such other reliefs as is just and proper, including but not limited to the cost of this action and the reasonable attorney fees and expenses pursuant. Oh, so they just want to fucking get paid. They want to get the bag. I respect them for that. And then, yeah, the final page is just, of course, where you get a hold of these folks. And yeah, Sidney Wood, Lynn Wood, who's might be a crazy person, but yeah, what they got here is staggering, and you'll love to see it. How about that? No evidence of widespread voter fraud. It's just all full of typos. There's nothing to see here. Well, it's going to be going before a judge here next week. It could be going in front of a judge tomorrow because courts are back in session, but everybody's going to be socially distanced shopping and trampling each other. I don't fucking know how it's going to work, but perhaps if not tomorrow, I'm going to be seeing some stuff on Monday. And there's supposed to be some more stuff dropping on Monday. And even before we get that, we got to cover what's happening in Georgia right now because it looks an awful lot like this. But it's also, of course, specific to a bunch of different claims that's going on there. And it's getting spicy. And it's getting good. And we're in for a couple more weeks of fucking insanity, folks. So hopefully stick around for that. I thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.